The hidden witness at Golgotha. The witness. The road to the skull was thick with dust and shouting. Claudia kept her veil close, the fabric heavy with the scent of crushed incense she had pressed into it earlier. She moved quickly, her handmaid a step behind, both wrapped in plain cloaks. If any soldier looked twice, he would see only two fragile women curious about the spectacle. Not the governor's wife, threading her way through Jerusalem's alleys. She found a place near the rocks, half hidden by a jutting ledge. From there the hill opened before her, a barren crown lifted against the darkened sky. 3 crosses stood, stark and obscene against the horizon. Claudia's eyes locked on the man in the center. This was the face from her dream, pale with strain, yet steady. Eyes closed, lips moving in words she could not catch. She remembered the night terror that had jolted her from sleep, the figure clothed in light, a hush falling over the world. She had clutched her chest, gasping. The dread had not left her. She had sent Pilate a warning, have nothing to do with that righteous man, but he had waved it off. Now, here he hung. The hours dragged. Soldiers cast lots at his feet. Priests spat curses. Passers-by wagged their heads. Yet even in agony he spoke words about forgiveness, about thirst, about a kingdom beyond this hill. Claudia pressed her hand to the stone beside her, as if to steady the world itself. Then came his final cry, clear, broken, commanding. It is finished. The ground shook. Stones cracked. Dust leapt from the earth. Claudia staggered, clutching her handmaid's arm. Screams rolled through the crowd as the temple veil tore in the city below. She looked once more at the cross, at his stilled head, and in that silence knew her dream had been no fancy of an anxious woman. The chamber was dim. A single lamp burned low. Outside, the palace murmured with guards and messengers, but Claudia had drawn the curtains and dismissed all save one. Mara knelt by the table, hands folded in her lap, eyes lowered. "Speak," Claudia said. Her voice was low, but there was command in it. "Tell me what you believe." Mara hesitated. "Lady, I am a servant. My words are dust." Claudia leaned forward. "Not dust. I saw him die. I heard his cry. And since then the city is filled with fire and whispers. You know the scriptures. You must tell me what it means." Mara lifted her gaze. It shone with tears, yet with a strange brightness too. Our fathers spoke of him, though we did not understand. The prophet Isaiah wrote, "He was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. Yet he bore our griefs and carried our sorrows. He was wounded for our transgressions, crushed for our iniquities. By his stripes we are healed." The words fell heavy in the chamber. Claudia felt them strike her chest like arrows. "He was wounded," she repeated softly, "and healed us by it?" "Yes, lady," Mara said, her voice steadying. "The servant of the Lord suffers, and by his suffering many are made whole. Our teachers wondered what it meant, but now I think we have seen it." Claudia closed her eyes. The dream returned. The figure in light, the calm amid rage. She pressed her hand to her breast. "I warned my husband. I begged him to have nothing to do with this righteous man, yet Rome crushed him still. What hope can there be if even governors cannot stop it?" Mara leaned closer, daring to rest her hand lightly on Claudia's arm. "Lady, it was not Rome that crushed him. It was the will of the Lord. So the prophet said, it pleased the Lord to bruise him, to make his soul an offering for sin. But he shall see his offspring. He shall prolong his days. Death cannot hold him." The lamp fluttered. For a moment the chamber seemed to vanish in darkness. Then the flame leapt up again. Claudia stared into it, her breath catching. You speak as though he yet lives. Mara's lips trembled, but she did not look away. Because he does. The women saw him. They touched him. He spoke to them in the garden. He called them by name. Claudia rose suddenly, pacing the room, her silken gown brushing the floor. If this is true, then Rome has not destroyed him. Rome has destroyed itself. Mara's eyes followed her. No, lady, Rome is but clay in the potter's hands. This kingdom is not of stone or iron. It is of heaven, and it will grow. Claudia stopped, turning back. And what of me? I am Pilate's wife, bound to the empire's heart. What am I to do with this faith that burns and will not let me rest? Mara bowed her head. Do what the women did. Keep the word. Speak when you may, and wait upon the Lord. The chamber fell silent again. Only the lamp crackled, its smoke curling upward like a prayer. Claudia pressed her hands together, fingers white at the knuckles. Mara's tears slipped free. She bent her head to the floor, murmuring words older than the empire. Blessed are you who believe. Claudia lifted her gaze toward the unseen heavens beyond the palace roof. She spoke not loudly, but with a steady voice. Lord, remember me also. The lamp flared, and in the quiet of Pilate's house a new disciple was born. Pilate's recall and the journey. The ship's timbers sang low under the weight of the sea, a groan like a beast turning in uneasy sleep. Ropes creaked, gulls wheeled and cried, a salt wind pressed Claudia's veil against her cheek, as if the sea itself wished to see her face. Judea's shoreline thinned to a line of ash behind them, then to a dim thought on the horizon, then to nothing. Lady, Mara said softly beside her, bracing herself against the rail. You should rest. I must look once more, Claudia answered, even if I see only the place where the land should be. Mara did not argue. She knew by now the kinds of looking that had nothing to do with eyes. On the ocean, sailors darted like swallows, bare feet thudding. The ship rose and fell, as if bowing to some unseen sovereign in the deep. Claudia breathed with it. Her thoughts moved as the water moved, forward, backward, forward, bearing old scenes on their backs, then letting them slide away. Memory came like a tide, slow but relentless. It began with a seal broken and a parchment shaken free. A letter from Rome, its Latin clipped and cold. Pilate had held it under the clear light of morning, eyes moving as though he walked a high ridge with cliffs on both sides. Summons, he said at last. Not to her. To the room, to the walls, to the marble that could not answer. Claudia recalled the moment after, the way the light shifted without moving. She had stood so still her anklets did not chime. Then we go, she had said. Pilate's jaw set. We are sent. Do not dress it as choice. He had turned toward the courtyard, where soldiers practiced their drills, shouting cadence into a wind that smelled faintly of cedar from the hills. He watched them, as if their rhythm could steady his own. Claudia had seen the boy in him then, the one who had learned early that power was a cloak sized for taller men. Rome devours its governors, he murmured. It gnaws and gnaws until only the bits it wants are left. Then Rome is a mouth, Claudia said, and mouths can be fed truth, even if they spit it out. He had glanced at her, uneasy. I do not care to speak of your Galilean now. You care, she said, every hour, and more in the night. Silence filled the air. The letter curled at the edges where his fingers pressed it. He did not look away from the soldiers, but his breath betrayed him. Small, ragged, the kind that comes when a man thinks of a chance lost and cannot call it back. On the ship, a wave broke. Spray caught Claudia's veil with 100 cool hands. Mara reached to steady her. Claudia let herself be steadied. She could feel the letters dry scrape beneath her fingertips even now, though it was long packed away with other documents, orders, receipts, the small paper bones of Rome's painted skeleton. In her chamber, the lamp burned low as always. The women gathered. Mara, the widow of the centurion, 2 girls who cleaned the basins in the hall, an old cook with trembling hands and a voice like warm bread. They prayed in whispers that tried to be words, and in words that tried to be song. Claudia did not tell them that fear rode her shoulders like a hawk. They could see it anyway. They brought courage in their eyes the way other women brought fruit. "Lady," the widow said one night, "if you go, who will hold the stories here?" "You will," Claudia answered, and meant it. "The God who fed 5,000 with a few loaves does not need my handful to do his work. Keep the word, keep each other." They took her hands as if to memorize them. And when Mara walked her back to the inner court, a hush fell between them, as if the night itself wished to hear what neither dared to speak. At last, Mara whispered it anyway. The small, radiant audacity. "He will have Rome!" Claudia stopped in the corridor. Lamplight drew a slender gold road on the stone between them. "Say it again!" "He will have Rome." She had not slept after that. She lay with her eyes open, watching lamplight play across the ceiling's carved flowers, thinking of a fisherman preaching beside marble, of psalms murmured behind senators' curtains, of bread broken in courtyards where slaves carried amphorae and angels carried news. The dream of her youth had been of villas and laurel. Now her dreams were of houses with doors half open and a name spoken inside them like water. A gull screamed above the ship. Another answered. Mara tucked Claudia's veil more tightly. "The sea will take your veil if it can, lady." "It will have to settle for tears," Claudia said, and only then realized her cheeks were wet. The deck heaved gently. Beyond the bow, the line between sea and sky was a blade of steel. Claudia tried to imagine the map beneath them, Tyre and Sidon behind, Cyprus somewhere to the north, then the long lift toward Rhodes and the Straits. And Rome. Rome. Rome at the end, like a throne, and like a trap. She had never loved it the way Pontius loved it. He loved it the way boys love mothers who cannot love them back. She loved it the way a physician loves a fever, interested more in what it reveals than what it claims. Pilate stayed below deck, away from the wind that made his eyes water and his temper short. He had grown quieter with each league they left behind. Claudia had sat with him the night they boarded, the moon thick as a coin over the harbour, and watched him weigh silence as if it were a sentence. "Do you ever consider," she said then, "that the Lamb may judge wolves?" He had not even pretended to misunderstand. "What judge could be just?" he said. "Who lets himself be judged first?" "The kind who heals the hands that hammered him." Pilate's laugh came like a cough. "You have gone over to them entirely." "I have gone over to him." She reached for his hand. He let her. His grip was still strong. "You might still cross, too." He shook his head. "I crossed a different line the day I washed my hands. There is no going back from that way of washing. The skin learns what the soul does." Claudia had not tried to pull him. The spirit blows where it wills. She had learned that much. She only sat with him a while. And when he slept in exhausted knots, she smoothed the worry from his brow as if he were the boy she had seen beneath all his titles. Now, on the third morning at sea, clouds like sheaves of wool spilled across the east. The ship found a steadier gait in calmer water. The captain muttered something about favourable omens. Sailors spat over their shoulders for luck. Mara brought dried figs and a little bread wrapped in cloth. Claudia broke it and shared. When Mara bowed her head before eating, Claudia found her own head had bowed without her telling it to do so. "Is it sin," she asked, half a smile behind the veil, "to hold a sacrament over figs on a ship owned by a man who cheats his gods?" Mara's eyes warmed. "Lady, he ate beside fisher nets. He will not refuse figs on a deck." The sea bore them westward. Memory moved again. It brought Caesarea's last morning, pigeons nodding on the roofline like old men, the steward wringing his hands, Pilate dictating, and the scribe's wrist cramping to keep up. Complaints about aqueduct funds, census disputes, threats from the temple authorities, all the ordinary grist of imperial rule. Copied. Pilate had wheeled on the scribe suddenly. "Let the next man untie these knots. I am done." "I wish that were true." He had looked at her as if she had named him. For a heartbeat, she saw tenderness wash up in him like a wave that wanted shore but had never learned the shape of land. Then it fell back. The usual stones showed. "I have only Rome," he said. "It is a poor god and a hungry one, but it is mine." "And he is mine," she said. "He feeds the hungry gods with himself, and still remains." "Then he has more flesh than any man," Pilate muttered, but without much venom. He seemed tired of striking the air. Days later they sighted the long stone fingers of a harbour thrust into the foam. Rome's satellites had many mouths, but all of them fed the city sooner or later. Warehouses hunched like patient beasts along the quays. The air smelled of amphorae and tar, and of fish, the kind that feeds men who know how to be hungry. Carters shouted. Priests muttered. Officials adjusted the weight of their authority as one might adjust a cloak that slips. Rome itself rose in her mind before she saw it. Marble that shone, columns that showed strength, carved legends that showed the conquered. Pilate would be weighed there and found wanting or not. The difference, Claudia knew now, would not be the difference that mattered most. When they at last entered the city, it was as if a lion had yawned and decided for the moment not to eat them. Pilate lost height in the presence of larger men. Old friends greeted him like actors. Not as a victor. He bowed where he should, argued where he dared, and listened to whispers about positions available in provinces no one wanted. Claudia found rooms that faced a courtyard with a fig tree whose leaves clapped gently in the afternoon winds. She set her lamp on a small table as if planting a standard. Mara learned where bread could be bought with less chalk in it. The steward counted coins in a new tongue and looked no happier about the sum. At night, sounds rose and changed, laughter that sounded like victory, laughter that sounded like grief, mixed with prayers to many gods and the rattle of dice. Mara came to her one of those nights. "Lady, a woman from the household of Caesar's guard spoke to me in the market." She knew the name. "She said there are those here who belong to him." Claudia felt the lamp's flame lean toward that sentence, as if the wick had a soul. "Where?" "In houses," Mara said, a smile like dawn. "In kitchens and in atriums when the house sleeps, in gardens where fig leaves clap, in places where the marble cannot hear." Claudia laughed, quiet, incredulous, almost giddy. "Then the fishermen have thrown their nets into the Tiber." And they will draw up senators and slaves together, Mara said. Claudia laid her hand over the parchment and lowered her head. She did not pray with many words. She had learned something about the way heaven listens. Lord, she said simply, you are not finished. Pilate's name moved through the city like a rumor that had lost its urgency. Men remembered offenses differently depending on who stood in the room. Some called him harsh, some weak, some efficient, some fool. Rome played with reputations the way children play with pebbles, picking them up, pocketing them, throwing them for the pleasure of the ark. Claudia suffered none of that to enter her chamber. Her house was not a room in Rome's game. Her house was a place where bread could become memory, and memory could become law. The women came. They came as if summoned by the same wind that had filled the ship. Some were Greeks with vowels like olive oil. Some were Romans with names that opened doors and hearts that opened only at night. Some were slaves whose wrists still carried the shadow of iron. They came with reports, with questions, but most of all with hunger for his peace. Claudia listened and became, without title or ordination, the kind of woman people call mother because they have been fed. Tell again, one whispered, about the hill. Claudia told it again. She used fewer adjectives than the poets would have liked, and more silence than the rhetoricians would have allowed. She let the sentences carry the weight, one stone at a time, until they made an altar. Tell again, said another, what he cried. She told that too, and when she reached, it is finished, she let it fall, and did not try to catch it. There is a kingdom without walls that rises inside men. I saw its king. Epilogue, Memory and Sainthood. The years passed like shadows across marble. Pilate's name thinned to a footnote in dusty archives, a record of disputes and unrest. He died in obscurity, as men who cling to Rome often do, swallowed by the very city he sought to grow. But Claudia's dream did not die. Whisper by whisper, it went out. First among women who served bread in kitchens, then among slaves who carried pitchers, then among merchants who travelled with sealed scrolls in their packs. They told one another, the wife of the governor dreamed of him, she called him righteous, she serves him righteously. In time, the story reached the pens of those who gathered the gospel. Gospel of Matthew records it plainly. While Pilate sat on the judgment seat, his wife sent word to him, saying, "Have nothing to do with that righteous man, for I have suffered much because of him in a dream today." Just one verse, one line. Yet it carried the weight of a lifetime. Later, others whispered still bolder that she believed, that she bore witness, that she was numbered among the saints. In the East, they gave her a feast day, calling her holy. Some named her Procula, others Claudia. But the name mattered less than the flame. What endured was the image, a Roman lady, veiled and trembling, warning her husband against blood. And then, when blood was spilled, carrying the memory of that man into the very heart of Rome. The scrolls grew, the churches spread, the witness deepened, and always, somewhere at the edge of the tale, her figure remained, a dreamer who woke to truth, a woman of marble halls who bent her knee to a carpenter's son. The end